This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. It may shock you to find out that there's a debate in the fly fishing world, and that is social media good or bad? Now, part of that statement is said with a little bit of sarcasm and humor, but I think that for many people, if you were to give this podcast to everyone who fly fishes, and you know what, I would encourage you to do so, and that they subscribe and like on iTunes, and then go to castingacross.com to read the articles on there. But if this podcast were to be distributed to everybody who fly fishes, even just in the United States, I truly believe the vast majority of them would say, I didn't know that there was a debate about social media and fly fishing, because most people who fly fish aren't on social media. Most people who fly fish just go fly fishing. They might have friends who fly fish. They might have a Trout Unlimited chapter that they spend time with that fly fishes, but they are not on their phones scrolling and tapping and liking and following and unfollowing and making comments about people who like, follow, and unfollow. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of those things. I'll get to that in a little bit, but I'm saying there's a lot of people out there across the age demographics, across all the other demographics you can think of, who fly fish but don't spend their time online looking at people who fly fish and interacting with people who fly fish. So I think that's important for us to remember. I think because this is a topic that is popular, and me talking about it in the middle of 2019, relatively late to the game in putting my 2 cents in, but this is something that's received a lot of conversation, but I think it's disproportionate to the amount of people who are talking about fly fishing generally, if that makes sense. And so that leads me to my second thing, and I think that's worth pointing out, and I don't mean this to be, super critical, but I think it's well-founded, and I'll explain that momentarily, but that the people who are most vocal and most critical about people using social media and fly fishing, many of them, not all of them, many of them, it's kind of like the sophomores teasing the freshmen. A lot of times it's being done in pretty immature ways. It's being done in ways that are looking to win the argument, not necessarily win the person. Show your moral superiority as an angler, whatever that's worth, and their obvious ignorance of best fish handling practices, or some made-up standard of how many pictures of a fish should be taken, or things like that. Now, are there valid points and things that need to be addressed out there? Absolutely. But I find a lot of the self-proclaimed internet police don't have a lot of tact, and again, they're looking to win an argument, not win a person. It's almost as if the desired result is that person shutters their social media account, puts all their fly rods up for consignment sale, and never steps on the river again, rather than, you made a mistake, try to do better in the future. Again, for whatever that's worth, I understand that I'm saying that into a microphone behind a computer, not to someone's face, but that's just my observation. And not all people who criticize social media are like that, but that is, as in anything, something as enormous as politics or religion or anything else, there's a lot of bravery behind a keyboard and in a comment, and not a lot of seeking out of real conversations. things that are said online would never be said to someone's face. And if they were said to someone's face, there would be an issue. But again, that's something that's not just in fly fishing, that's across the board. And going back to the initial point, I think a lot of people out there would be really shocked at some of the kind of interactions that happen on social media, because that's just not their thing. Most people, it's not their thing. So anyway, social media and fly fishing. There's people that believe it's very, very good and people that believe it's very, very bad. And I think they both have very valid points. I'm not here to necessarily advocate for one position or the other. I'd like to kind of give a different way of looking at it, and that's that social media on its own is neutral. That's not different. It's not original, but that's the way I think about it. Social media, and primarily, again, in 2019 for fly fishing, that's Instagram, a photo sharing app that people have on their phones, is morally neutral. Let me give an example kind of moral neutrality of a thing. So you have a room, and in that room there's a table, and on that table there's a firearm. Say it's a rifle. And some people get up in arms about the idea of arms, but I think we'll just have to roll with me on the analogy and save your criticisms of guns for something else. But that gun on the table in a room is morally neutral. A gun is not inherently good. A gun is not inherently bad. A gun is steel and wood, and that's all it is. However, it can be used for a very good purpose. If that room is in someone's home and their home is being invaded, or a bear or a person or a zombie is coming in, and they use that gun to defend their family, their children, their wife, their husband, whatever, then that gun has taken up a noble cause because it's in the hands of somebody who is seeking something noble. But it's not just the act of nobility that makes that item, that morally neutral item, good. There can also be symbolism that makes it good. So that gun hung up on the wall, not being used, reminding people of the time that mom or dad or John Boy picked it up and defended the house against the intruder. It's not being used for, it's not being shot, it's not being shouldered, it's simply being displayed, but in that there's symbolism of something good. But the gun itself is not morally good, nor is it morally bad if it is picked up and it is used for murder, for holding up a convenience store. The person's bad, and the person is obviously making a very, very bad choice. They're doing something illegal. They're doing something morally wrong. From an objective standard, it is morally wrong. But is the gun bad? The gun might be used for something bad, as small as them holding it, thinking I might do something bad, all the way up to actually committing homicide. But it's not the weapon itself. And you could substitute gun for rock or baseball bat or battle mace or something like that, and it's all the same thing. But you can have the very same weapon used for very disparate reasons, and I think that goes to show that there's moral neutrality. The very same weapon, and this is not historically accurate, could be used in a parade in the 1940s in Washington, D.C. and in Berlin, and they would both symbolize very, very different things. And it doesn't mean that one that came off the production line first was a good thing and the one that came off the line second was a bad thing. You could make the same argument about boots or sunglasses or anything else. If no one says aviator sunglasses are morally evil because the Night Stalker Richard Ramirez wore them, or hoodies because Ted Kaczynski wore them, or anything like that. Things certainly represent things that are good and things that are bad, but on their own, they are not good or evil. That's a very long analogy, and either that gets you excited, or you think I thought this was a fly fishing podcast. But I think that social media in general and fly fishing social media in particular falls into that same category. It can be used for good. It can be used for evil. It can be used for the benefit of people and fisheries. It can be used to the detriment of people and fisheries. But on its own, it is morally neutral. So all that to say, I understand that a lot of people find it easy to show off, to demonstrate pride, and to do so in ways that damage fish and damage their ecosystems through social media. But I would argue that it didn't start in 2000 and whatever when social media took off and became present on the on the palm of our hands and our phones. I think this probably happened in our grandparents' generation, or if you are older, in your generation and your grandparents' generation. This would happen at the fly shop. Somebody come in and say, "I killed 15 trout today," simply because they wanted to tell other people they killed 15 trout that day. Not because they needed to feed their family, not because they had a string of bad luck and were accidentally foul hooking things, not because they were well within their limit and they legitimately just wanted to keep 15 trout, but because they wanted to show off how good of an angler they were and they wanted to make themselves look better. It didn't equate into little digital red hearts that added up underneath the photograph, but it made, Bob and Steve and Harry at the fly shop say, "Wow, you're quite the angler." This would happen at the fly shop. This would happen at the bar. This would happen at the boat ramp. Now, does social media on a phone make it easier? In a way, yes, it does. But at the same time, it also makes positive things easier. So you have to understand, we have to take the good with the bad. So if there was a shutdown of a river, for example, and this wasn't necessarily something that would have been done 50 years ago, but because of heat, of drought, or something like that, or just a change in regulations, or even something for the angler's safety, a chemical spill, a bear sighting, you would have had to have gone to the fly shop to get that news, to stay off the river, or to meet up at the river for a certain project or something like that. But today, that can be shared very, very quickly with a couple taps of the thumb, and dozens, hundreds, thousands of people can have that information, whereas 50 years ago, they would have actually had to have gone to those places and just happened to be there at the right time to get that information. So I think you see there the dichotomy, the good and the bad that comes with social media. I'm not going to necessarily advocate using it or not using it. I enjoy using it. I think that there's a lot of benefits for it. I think it's great to be able to share things. Personally, I use it not to necessarily show what Matthew catches, but as a vehicle for kind of pushing casting across. I run a fly fishing website and a podcast, and as much as I like people just seeing pictures of my fish, I kind of like it to steer towards my writing. That's what I do. So I'm not doing it to be sneaky. It's not a bait and switch. Like, you're happy looking at my fish, but underneath it, it's really a ploy to get you to log on so I get views. But I mean, it's all part of kind of marketing, I guess you could say. And a lot of people use it for that also. Small companies, instead of paying big bucks to a marketing agency, they are able to just take pictures of their products and put it on there. And I know a lot of people have problems with that too, because they assume that the fish that are in the marketing pictures have probably been mishandled. And that probably happens, but you can't vilify an entire practice because some in that are partaking in that practice are doing bad things. We can't paint with a broad brush. It's very, very funny that we live in a day and age where the idea of objective morality is very, very silly, and people don't ascend to that anymore. But at the same time, it's very, very quick to paint with broad brushes and just lump people into categories. The idea of tolerance and intolerance in something as small and minute as the fly fishing community, I think is indicative of just kind of where we are as a culture, kind of not knowing upstream from downstream, if you will. So again, I'm not going to advocate one position or another, using it or not using it. People who use it for good things. People who use it for bad things. People who don't use it, I mean, they have their reasons also. But what I would say is, if you do feel compelled to correct somebody, it's not about winning an argument. It's not about looking like a white knight or a trout justice warrior or anything like that on a comment on Instagram. It shouldn't be, I should say. For you, it might be. I think that some people, the intention of their comments, either directly or in direct messaging or anything like that, is not that person would learn better fish handling practices, but that they would close down their social media account, sell all their fly fishing equipment, and never step foot on a stream again. I mean, that's the way it comes across, that people think that if you've made a couple of cardinal sins, not keeping a fish wet or, grabbing a fish improperly, that you have now disqualified yourself and you're excommunicated from the culture of fly fishing. And, you might say that's extreme, but if you read comments on there, and sometimes I find them humorous, other times I find them sad that people actually treat other people that way, from the safety of their little screen with their thumbs. Do some people do things that are incredibly naive at best and idiotic at worst, the way they handle fish and the way they treat the resource? Yes. Do they deserve to be called out on it? Probably. But how do you do that? Again, is it to win the argument, to look good for anybody who might come across your contact or your comment, or is it to correct? Is it to rebuke? Is it to move them in the right direction? So, the reality is that this would take a lot of guts, but if you did see somebody and you knew it was like a local fishery that you were aware of and they were having a problem, instead of putting a comment on there like, I saw you doing this, you're an idiot, what about a direct message saying, hey, this is so-and-so, I saw this picture, I had a question for you, feel free to give me a call or a text, here's my number. You might think that's crazy. You might think that that's opening the door for all manner of bad things. But if you really are that passionate about something that you would go as far as to write something mean, for lack of a better term, on social media, then why not say it to their face? Why not say, hey, I noticed this. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'd like to hear it from you. This is where social media, actually, I think there is something that is not inherently morally neutral, but quickly leads to something bad, and that's the impersonalization of relationship. The impersonalization, I don't know if that's a word, but you know what I mean. It's taking the personal nature away from what are truly personal interactions. All of this, and as I'm saying, as I'm 16 minutes into it, again, this is so minute and so silly for so many people. But the fact of the matter is that I get on to see pictures of the, 300 or so people I follows, fish they've caught and the new products they've come out with. And every once in a while you see a comment or an account that pops up and it's just all negative. And, it kind of bums me out. It's a buzzkill. And that especially if somebody is the target of their ire that might not deserve it because of what they're doing, is, again, that naivety, you really wonder, what's being accomplished here. So, again, fly fishing social media is, I feel like I've made a decent case that it is morally neutral. And what we need to be more concerned about is people's motives, people's hearts, people's priorities. And the only way to make a difference in that is not for blasting people online, but it's to have actual conversations and real dialogue, and that's where progress happens. This week on Casting Across, I have a few articles. The first one was called Fly Fishing Gear, 3 Things to Leave, 3 to Bring. And just a very simple article. I mean, you might think that these kinds of articles are a dime a dozen out there on the internet, and they're very, very common, but this one takes a little bit of a spin. It's a different spin. 3 things that people usually bring on the water that I don't think they need to bring, and 3 things they might not bring that I think are worth bringing. So check it out. If you have something you would insert in one of those categories, it'd be great to leave in the notes of that article or shoot me an email and I can maybe share it on one of the future podcasts. The second one that came out in the week, and this was called Fly Fishing with Family, a 3-act play. So I went to the beach with my family and hilarity ensued. And I'll just tell you the end of the story. No fish were caught, and there was damage to fly fishing gear. But you want to check that out, called Fly Fishing with Family, a 3-act play. This week's recommendation is the Angler's Pint. The Angler's Pint is a glass. It is actually larger than a pint glass. So it is a very, very high quality glass with some legitimately awesome fly fishing or just fishing art on the side. done by artist Karen Talbot. They're produced up in Maine, and they really are quality glassware. I mean, you can get a cup with a fish on it anywhere, but these are great glasses, no matter what you put in it. They are good because they're large, they're distinctive. They come in, again, the big pint glasses, and they also have little shorter glasses, but freshwater, saltwater, flies. There's some that get put out for various events and things like that, and then there's also some the original art you can get. There's stemmed glasses, you name it. Just if you go to anglerspint.com, you can see them. They're available at Orvis also, but they're just really cool. They made my father's gift guide last year on castingacross.com, and I think they're going to make it again this year because they're just cool, and any dad or anyone else would be happy to not just have one, but probably have two. Hint, hint, family. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe in your favorite podcast app and rate the podcast on iTunes. Then head over to castingacross.com where you'll find more info on this podcast and 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.